Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience. I'm here tonight with my full review of the Dan Clark Audio Aeon 2 open back headphone. If you've been around headphones for a while, you may know that Dan Clark Audio used to be Mr. Speakers. Not sure when they changed the name, I'm thinking maybe a year ago. Well anyway, these were loaned to me by Apos Audio and they are available through Apos Audio, and these currently sell for $899, and that would be in US dollars. This is a full-sized wired over-the-ear open back headphone. They use a planar magnetic driver that measures 62 by 34 millimeters. They have a claimed weight of 340 grams, but I actually measured them at lighter than that, 327 grams on my kitchen scale. They have an impedance of only 13 ohms and an efficiency of 92 decibels at 1 milliwatt. They have a detachable cable, and it's about 2 meters long. It's actually a very nice material, very soft, flexible, doesn't make any noise rubbing on itself. At the amp end, you've got 6.3 millimeter single-ended connection, which screws off and gives you a 3.5 millimeter connection. And then at the headphone end, it uses what, now I've made a mess, got them tangled up. And these actually don't tangle very easy, so anyway, uses what looks sort of like a 4-pin mini XLR connection, but these are a little different. Dan Clark Audio calls this a Hyros style connector, and it basically just snaps on, and then to take them off you've got to pull this little ring here and it just pulls right off. It is not interchangeable with 4-pin mini XLR cables, and because of that I was only able to review this using the single-ended outputs of my amps. My Audio GD Master 9 does have balanced outputs, but I didn't have a balanced cable for these, so I used what I had. So anyway, the headphone itself, it's a very nice looking headphone. And the difference in the looks between the open back is, I think it's an aluminum grill, where the closed back version of this has, I think it's a graphite or carbon fiber or something back on it, solid back. But anyway, they have very nice, thick, cushy ear pads, very soft, and they're covered in a synthetic leather that I guess comes from Japan. They have quite a bit of swivel and move to them. They swivel here at this point, and the band has quite a bit of flex, and then the strap is adjustable by sliding up and down. And as you can see, they have sort of an ear-shaped ear cup that does fit really well. The insides have plenty of room for my ear, and I actually find these to be extremely comfortable. They're very lightweight. They feel like almost nothing on my head. I feel almost no clamping pressure at all, but yet they stay very secure. I couldn't shake these off if I tried, I don't think. So anyway, one of the most comfortable headphones that I've ever worn, and I really do like that part of it. I mean, these are exceptionally comfortable, and I did want to show you these are unique, that they do fold up. And see if I can do this here, and they fold up onto themselves, and when they're folded up they become very compact and actually fit in this case. It's a small case, but they fit in there along with the cable. And besides from the case coming with these and the cable, obviously, you get some little foam inserts, well, foam and felt, that you can put in the ear cups to make some changes to the sound. You have some thin black foam inserts, and then you've got some thicker, these would be more of a felt material, a set of these, or the thickest would be these white, which are also sort of a felt material, and I think you can actually use a combination of more than one of these at a time. I did want to mention that these are sold and described as an open back headphone, but to tell you the truth, to me this seems more like a closed back. It is open back. I mean, I understand why it's called an open back, because if I put this headphone on and I put my hands over the ear cups, it does change the sound. So that is showing that it is an open back headphone. But when I put this on, it really cuts out a lot of outside noise. I mean, I've actually tried some open back headphones that actually amplified the sound at certain frequencies it's coming in, and these really, the first thing I noticed when I put them on is how much of the background noise it actually does cut out. And also they do a pretty decent job for an open back headphone of keeping the inside music from coming out. They do leak a little bit, but really not that much compared to most open back headphones. I did want to mention that my testing on this headphone was done. The equipment I used was primarily CDs played by my Cambridge Audio 540C CD player, used as a transport only, running a digital signal into a benchmark media DAC1, and then used primarily my Audio GD Master 9 amp, but because I couldn't use the balanced output, I did use my benchmark HPA2 amp and the iFi Zen DAC, which is a combination DAC and headphone amp, and all three worked really well with this headphone. I did want to mention though that I assumed this was going to be a very easy headphone to drive with an impedance of only 13 ohms. That's the lowest I've ever personally seen in a headphone. And usually a low impedance headphone is easier to drive. But that's not the case here. It is pretty inefficient at 92 decibels at 1 milliwatt, and it does take some power to get these going. And I did some direct comparisons, and I found this to be about the same as the Hi-Fi Man Sundara as far as power requirements. If I hooked both of these up to the same amp, went back and forth with the volume knob at the same place, this and the Sundara are at about the same volume level. And the Sundara is known as being fairly hard to drive, and most people do recommend, a pretty substantial headphone amp with the Sundara. And I don't personally have a portable device or a phone to test this with. And I know there are some portable devices that can put out a lot of power and power just about any headphone, but I'm assuming that most phones probably would not have sufficient power to get the sound you want to get out of this headphone. So once again, about the same power requirements as the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, but it's easier to drive than the Hi-Fi Man HE560. And I did want to mention that the three headphones that I did primarily compare this to would be the LSA HP2 and the Kennerton Valley, and that would be the 2019 version, not the original Valley. And there are quite a bit of differences between the two, the older and newer Valley. And then I also threw the Hi-Fi Man HE560 into the mix because I had it out to see if this was as hard to drive as that was, and it wasn't. It's more like the Sundara, but I did compare the sound of the HE560 because that headphone originally did sell for $899, which is what this sells for, and the LSA HP2 I believe sells for $799. So, and the Valley 2019 version I think is 900 and something right now, about 960 or 70. So they're all in pretty close to the same price range, within about $100. Anyway, music, my typical mixture of some rock, some pop, some electronic, Mostly acoustical music. I like female vocals for reviewing headphones, and a little bit of orchestral music. Getting into the sound of this headphone, the first thing I did notice is it has a very quiet background. And when you put it on, it just, when I first listened to this, it just seemed like it had a really black background. And I think for the reason for that is it does have a little bit of dip in the upper mid range. I would say that this headphone is a little on the warm side of neutral and a little bit on the bassy side of neutral. I'm hearing a little bit of a bump in the mid bass and a little bit of a dip in the upper mid range, lower treble, and then another small bump probably up in the mid treble. So just a slight V shape to the sound. Not real far from neutral, but not really what I would consider a neutral headphone. If you think neutral headphones, like say the Hi-Fi Man Sandara would be an example of what I consider to be neutral, if that sounds a little thin or a little bright to you, then this is going to be a little bit warmer and a little bit bassier, so a little more weight to the sound. Looking at the bass, I would say the extension into the sub bass is very good on this. They play low, and this is probably one of the bassier planar magnetic headphones that I've heard. And like I said, it sounds to me like there's a little bit of a bump in the mid bass, and it's relatively tight. It's not the tightest bass in the world, but it's not boomy or loose either. It's just you're paying a little bit of price for that. I would say maybe a 3 decibel bump in the mid bass. You're losing just a little bit of tightness because of that, but it's still very pleasant. And like I said, it doesn't sound muddy or distorted or anything like that. The mids, I would say that the upper mids, especially around female vocals, the mid to upper mids, I'm hearing female vocals as sounding a little set back, a little recessed, not in your face, just kind of, a little off in the distance compared to some headphones, say the LSA HP2 or the Hi-Fi Man HE560, where the upper mids and the female vocals are kind of right in your face. He's just set back a little bit further on the stage. The treble, I would say that upper mid-range dip goes a little bit probably into the lower treble, but I am hearing a little bit of a peak in the mid-treble where cymbals and bells and things are coming out pretty clear. They've got a pretty good sparkle. So I wouldn't call this a dark headphone at all. Just, I would say the treble kind of peaks in kind of a narrow spot, but it's where you would expect cymbals, bells, things like that, chimes to be. So it doesn't have quite the sparkle or the brightness of the Kennerton or the LSA or the Hi-Fi Man, but there are a lot of people out there that think both of those headphones are a little on the bright side. I know that's the two complaints I hear about Hi-Fi Man the most is they're either too bright or they sound thin, but they're neutral headphones, and that's not what everybody wants. And this headphone, like I said, is a little on the warm, a little bit on the bassy side of neutral. The treble, getting back to the treble is never ever harsh on these. I've never heard anything that sounded harsh or sibilant coming out of these headphones. Even if the recording isn't the best, these they never get fatiguing because of harsh treble. Getting into detail, resolution, these have good detail. There's no doubt about it, and listening to these without comparing them to something else, I don't hear any lack of detail at all. In fact, what I'm hearing is a very pleasant, very easy to listen to, very enjoyable headphone. It wasn't until I actually compared it to a couple of other headphones, and that would be the LSA HP2 and the Hi-Fi Man HE560. I'm hearing a little bit more detail in the mid-range. One place I heard it was, I was listening to Natalie Merchant, who was from 10,000 Maniacs, if you don't know who she was. Her voice has a lot of texture in it, and I wasn't hearing as much of that texture with this headphone as I was the LSA or the Hi-Fi Man. But it's not that the details are lacking on this, they're just a little bit set back and not as in your face in the mid-range. But overall, they do have real good detail, just not the absolute last word. Where those other two headphones I just mentioned, I would say are more on the analytical side, where this is just a very laid back, very pleasant headphone. Imaging is good. I have no trouble locating instruments. Everything has good separation. The voices, the instruments, all that are all separate from each other, coming from their own locations. Excuse me a second. Soundstage, I was actually surprised a little bit because, like I said, this to me seems almost like a closed back headphone. And usually with a closed back headphone, you get a narrow, more intimate soundstage. But somehow these manage to block out a lot of outside sound and hold in a lot of inside sound, yet have a pretty decent soundstage. These sound more to me like they have the soundstage of an open back headphone. I'm hearing quite a bit of width, and I'm hearing quite a bit of depth to it. So a surprisingly large soundstage and open sounding soundstage for as closed as these headphones actually are. Dynamics, not the most dynamic headphone in the world. It does have a little bit of punch in the mid bass, and that's because of that slight emphasis. But overall, I would say it's kind of a softer, more mellow, kind of easygoing sound. It's not, doesn't have in-your-face dynamics, but some headphones that do, that can get a little bit fatiguing. Excuse me. This is a headphone that I can listen to for hours on end, and the sound just never becomes fatiguing to me. So, you know, being a little bit of having a little bit of softness to the dynamics can be a good thing. You know, it's not, it doesn't jump, the sound doesn't jump out at you, but yet it's just very pleasant and easy to listen to for a long time. The fatigue factor on these, I would say, is very low in every way. First of all, going to comfort, these are extremely comfortable. They're very lightweight. The ear pads are very soft and comfortable. The weight's distributed well. Comfort-wise, I don't see how these could ever bother anyone. They're one of the most comfortable headphones I've worn. Sound-wise, once again, very low fatigue factor. Not aggressive, not in your face. The treble is very smooth. It's never harsh. It's never sibilant. And these are just, like I said, just a very pleasant headphone that you can listen to for a long time. They're also very forgiving. Some headphones, especially if a headphone is very analytical and very detailed, you end up, and this is my experience, with a very analytical, detailed headphone, I end up listening to about 10% of my music collection. I jump back and forth from my best sounding CDs. Okay, but the problem is a super analytical, super detailed headphone is going to bring out all the flaws in your recordings that aren't as perfectly done. So I tend to not listen to those. I end up, 90% of my music sits on the shelf, and I listen to 10% of it. Where this headphone, on the other hand, does not reveal all those little flaws in the recording the way an analytical headphone would, and I can listen to my entire collection with this. You know, it's not going to point out less than perfect recordings the way an analytical headphone would, and I can enjoy my whole collection with this. So, and that's one of the best things about this. Getting into what I like and dislike about this, there's very little I dislike. It's not the absolute last word in detail, but that's not always what I want. Sometimes I just want to relax and listen and enjoy, and this headphone is very pleasant to me. Before I did any comparisons to other headphones, I mean, I didn't hear any lack of detail. It just sounded really, really good to me, and it wasn't until I compared this to some more analytical headphones that I realized that this wasn't the absolute last word in detail, and it doesn't have the absolute tightest bass, but you're sacrificing a little bit of tightness for that little extra boost that this does have. Where, you know, some of the headphones with a tighter bass are going to sound a little thinner, a little leaner. So I really do like the sound of this headphone. And as far as what, you know, I like is just comfort-wise and just zero fatigue. And I can listen to my whole record collection or my whole music collection with this, and it's just a really good overall headphone. I did want to compare this to a couple of headphones. One that I found that does sound very similar to this would be the Kennerton Valley, and that'd be the 2019 version, not the original version. That had a completely different sound. Kind of the same, kind of a mellow, laid-back, easygoing sound. Kind of a little warm and a little bassy, a little on the warm side of neutral, a little on the bassy side of neutral. And the newer Valley has the new lighter weight headband and all that, and it's a little bit more than this, I think $60, $70 more, but you know, pretty competitive. The two have sort of a similar sound. But the one headphone that I noticed that this really reminded me of is about a year ago, I did a review of the Meza Empyrean, their flagship headphone, a $3,000 headphone. And this headphone in many ways reminds me of that. Kind of the shape of the ear cups, the soft Japanese leather ear pads, the almost zero clamping force, very comfortable, both extremely comfortable headphones. The Meza Empyrean may be the most comfortable headphone I've ever worn. And then sound-wise also, this has kind of that same kind of laid-back, slightly warm, slightly bassy, just very extremely pleasant sound. And these sound a lot like that. I don't have the Meza Empyrean here to compare directly now. I had it about a year ago, but from memory, what I can remember of it, this headphone almost instantly reminded me of the Empyrean. Just in a little bit in looks, but a lot in comfort and a lot in sound. So if the $3,000 Meza Empyrean is a headphone that you've always wanted or you're dreamed of, but a $3,000 headphone just is not in your budget, and that's the case with most of us. This headphone, still not cheap at $900, but it's less than a third of the cost of the Meza Empyrean, and really reminds me of it, and it's going to give you a pretty good taste of what that headphone's like. And some people consider the Empyrean to be one of the best headphones in the world, and if it's not in your budget, you really want to look at this headphone. So, bottom line, I find this very pleasant, very enjoyable, very forgiving. I can listen to all my music. Not the absolute last word in detail, not the absolute tightest bass, but just a very enjoyable headphone. And yes, I do recommend it. Unless you're looking for something super analytical, then there might be better choices for you. But for most of you, this is going to be a great headphone. So I'm going to wrap this up now, and once again, there'll be a link down at the bottom of the video. This is available through APOS Audio, who loaned it to me, and I thank them once again for loaning this to me for review. And once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We are now up to, I think, around 9,700 members. So I hope to see all of you over there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.